Excellent. All right. Well, welcome everyone. Excited to spend the next 45 minutes or so with you. As in the past, right, we've tried to have calls quarterly, either on economic thoughts or planning strategies. And the goal of these calls in general is really to leverage our independence at Snowden Lane, right? The ability to bring external, independent, bright, we'll call them the best and brightest opinions from all sorts of walks of life to our clients. So that's kind of cool. And what we've been able to do, of course, is to open it up to clients and friends and families. So we're excited to have everyone here today. The topic today is a challenging one, and many of us have or will or perhaps are dealing with aging parents, or either or potentially aging ourselves. So what we wanted to do is today is really the first of a three-part series to educate, assist clients in really the best way to help our parents age gracefully. So what does that mean? That means ensuring that our loved ones receive the best possible care, um, and are obviously financially optimized, and also have logistical and emotional support. So yeah, that's our goal. Our goal is to provide an expert advice and create a network of professionals so clients have support to make sure that we navigate through this, time in our lives. So before I begin, what I'd ask is I'm gonna give one or two more minutes of intro, but while I'm doing that, if anyone has specific question or something specific that they'd like to get out of the next 45 minutes, if you could share it in the chat, that would be terrific, because I will then make sure that we are using some of those questions or thoughts. So again, if you have a minute now, and you can click on that, let's see, specifically, if you can click on the chat and just share, or feel free to email me or text me any question or thought that you'd like to get out of the next 45 minutes, that would be terrific. So while everyone's doing that, I would first obviously thank everyone for their time to spend here, and certainly to our panelists, and certainly to Cole for organizing all of this. I want to specifically thank Vincenzo, who is a family friend of ours, and just coincidentally is now helping us with this. My sister is also a therapist, and I asked her if she knew of anyone who's focused on this elder care, and she said, Vincenza. I said, well, great. And so Vincenzo was kind enough to take some time to help us today, and then made an introduction to Barbara, and then I think you'll all find Barbara terrific. I'm sure we're going to be using Barbara's services as well, and you'll hear more about that in a minute. So thank you both. I will close and turn it over to Vincenza by saying two quick things. This is a three-part series. So in the past, we take care of estate planning and long-term care and wills and trust coordination for our clients. And in the past, we've kind of done that from a top-down approach, meaning we're always, understanding the financial plan and then making sure that these things are covered. What we wanted to try to do is kind of have a bottom-up approach. And that's really what today's the beginning of this three-part series is. So what do I mean by bottom up? Well, today we have Vincenza as a therapist, and then also Barbara, who is really a concierge, to talk through, how do we have these conversations with family? What topics can we bring up? What things should we be thinking about? And from Barbara's standpoint also, what are the types of issues that we're going to face? How do we go about solving them? What are the steps in doing so? And so that's really today's call, right? Bottom up, first conversation. So what we're going to do as we move forward is our second call is we actually have a Medicare consultant to talk through how is the best Medicare situation set up. And we'll also have another facilities type of concierge to talk about what facilities make sense for what times in the spectrum where our clients and friends are. And then in our last call, we're going to cover things like the estate planning and the elder care law and the things that we need to do to make sure we're financially optimized. So that's what the progression looks like. And I've talked a bunch, but I'm excited to set the stage here. And with that, what I'll do is I'll turn it over to Vincenza to kick us off, and I will start to take a quick look at some of the questions and make sure that we get some of them answered. And again, I'm really glad to see everyone here, and over to you, Vincenza.
So I'm going to share my screen.
All right, Vincenza, you should be able to share your screen now. Perfect.
See it? Can you see the
Yes.
PowerPoint? Great. Everyone see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So thank you, Jesse, for inviting me. And it's truly a pleasure. And again, thank you, Cole, for all the work. And I'm so happy to be doing this with Barbara as my teammate today. Barbara and I actually met a number of years ago when I first started working with older persons in an assisted living. And we just clicked. I think we just love each other, and we work the same way. So I'm saying that because I think Barbara and I, I would love for Barbara to piggyback on anything that I'm saying during my talk, because I find that she's been actually more in the elder care field longer than I have. So a little bit about me. As Jesse mentioned, I am a licensed clinical social worker. I'm also a family therapist. I have a master's in family therapy. For many years, I worked in the field as a social worker, and I ran programs for domestic violence survivors, for homeless families, mostly moms and children. And I started teaching at Fordham University, and then I got a full-time job at Fordham as an administrator running their internship department. And that's where I met Carly, Jesse's sister. And, that's how the journey began. So I've been a professor, and I was at Fordham. And then slowly around 2017, I started to think that it was time for me to end my tenure at Fordham. I wanted to do something different. And perchance, a student of mine who was an alum called me and said, would I supervise her because she was a social worker and at assisted living? And I said, sure. I thought, wow, this is a great opportunity. And that's how I started working with older persons. The student asked me if I would be a consultant, a therapist consultant at the agency where she was working. I started doing that, and I started seeing residents at the agency as a therapist. So I started working with people from 80, 85, 93 years old, and I absolutely fell in love with it. And I fell in love with all the colleagues I met, as I mentioned, especially Barbara and her team. So that's how I started. And I have learned so much in the past 6 years. But I also want you to know that personally, I started this journey with my own parents. I was 39 years old when my mom passed away. She was 73. I was a social worker, but I had to learn a lot of the resources that I needed to be able to care for my mom. And then my dad died when he was 93. And again, I found myself, of course, being the caregiver because I'm a social worker, and there's always one in the family who's the caregiver. So I learned a lot from my parents, but the value I've gained from working now in the past 6 years with residents in assisted living, and also in my private practice with older persons, I just can't tell you the wealth and the knowledge and the reward that it has given me. So what I decided to do today was to, and I know I have, just a few minutes, was to put a quick PowerPoint together to help you with how Jesse, what Jesse clearly outlined that he was looking for Barbara and I to talk about. So I'm just going to go through the PowerPoint, but please stop me and ask me any questions as I go through it. And in the PowerPoint, I will answer the questions about how do you navigate the difficult balance of, caring for your loved one and having to keep your loved one safe while also allowing them autonomy and independence and self-determination? How do we have a conversation with them without chastising, without making them feel as if, they're they don't know what they're doing, or making them feel that they're less than? How do we have those conversations? So I have some pointers for you. So let me get started. And please remind me, Cole, Jesse, whomever, when I need to stop, because I tend to go on. So, so I just have quick definitions of a family caregiver. A family caregiver is any one of us. And I know I have found myself in that position. I know Barbara has. Any relative, partner, friend, or neighbor who has a significant personal relationship and provides a broad range of assistance for an older person or an adult with a chronic or disabling condition. So the older person doesn't have to have a disabling condition, but the family caregiver is providing assistance for them. The care recipient is the older person. It's an adult with a chronic illness or disabling condition, or an older person who needs ongoing assistance with everyday tasks to function on a daily basis. So those are the basic definitions. Can I go on?
Please.
Okay, what is caregiving? So caregiving takes many forms. It's helping older, chronically ill, or disabled family members and friends in everyday ways. Many of us who do this, who are helpers, it's day-to-day tasks: going to the grocery store, cooking, cleaning house, doing the laundry, making plans such as, of course, medical appointments take up so much time, ordering medications, driving to the doctor, to many doctor's appointments, helping someone to get dressed, to take a shower, to give medication, as I said, prepare foods. There's so much that it involves in regards to caregiving. The issue is that us as family and friends, we think of ourselves in terms of relationship with, like, I was my mother's daughter, right? I didn't see myself as her caregiver. I saw myself as her daughter. So we don't see ourselves in that light. And so if we do not know that we are caregivers, then we don't know how to look for resources. And I think Barbara can speak on this. I was lucky that I was a social worker. So I was able, I knew how to find resources in the community, and I knew people. But in helping others now and helping others in my work as a social worker, many people, lay people who are not social workers, who are not in this field, they don't know. They are lost in trying to find the resources. And I know that's one of the things that Barbara does in her agency. So professionals are in the position of helping family members identify this role and what it means to each individual. I am the therapist who comes in and helps the care recipient, but what ends up happening too, I end up, as Jesse said, also helping the family. I end up working with the family because the family is so much in need of help in navigating this and knowing how to speak to their loved one. So just to quote, there is little doubt the families want and do care for their elderly relatives in need. Families, though, are often left on their own to navigate an increasing complex bureaucratic healthcare system, while at the same time, they're providing the bulk of their care of their loved one. The care has become more technical because health insurances have truncated hospital stays, as we know. Hence, families struggle where to turn to for support. And I think that's one of the things that Barbara's agencies agency does really well in helping families to find the resources. And I know for myself, when my mom, when I was 39, it was 1997, 98, things have changed dramatically in regards to health insurance since then. These are some statistics to keep in mind. Anywhere from 21 million to over 50 million family members provide care to an adult relative in need. Economic value. If one were to replace family caregivers with a home health aide, the value of family care would be $244 billion, 11 times the annual revenue of McDonald's. In 2030, 19 million over adults will be over the age of 80. You can thank the baby boomers for that, right? Includes me and Barbara. On average, family caregivers provide 30 plus hours of assistance per week. And this is from the Alzheimer's Association in 2020. I remember a professor of ours at Fordham who was an aging expert telling us in the 90s, the faculty, that we better prepare ourselves and our students that there's going to be a boom of older persons in the 2000s, and that's where the jobs will be, and a lot of organizations will be opening up, and here we are, right? Some rewards for you as a caregiver. Well, it gives you the chance to heal the past. Patience, right? One of the things is learning to listen. Gratefulness, increased compassion, peace of mind, closure, spiritual fulfillment, change priorities. You learned what's important. Developing new skills and competencies, because as a caregiver, you are learning a lot of new skills that you didn't anticipate you were going to be doing. Stress for caregiver. As demands and responsibilities increase, the health condition of the care recipient deteriorates, right? And then there's a higher level of burden that leads to more physical, financial, personal, and emotional stress on us, the caregiver, plus more negative health effects. I know for me, taking care of my mom, I was working, had a full-time job, 2 little kids, a house, and I kept getting heart palpitations. And I would go to the doctors and they would say to me, "You're under stress." And I would say, "No, I'm not. I'm not under stress. I'm fine. Something's wrong with my heart." Until I finally had to come to the conclusion that I was under a lot of stress. So here are some common stressors that you will deal with or are dealing with if you're currently a caregiver when it comes to caring for your loved one. Your loved one is resistant and angry. You end up having to do long distance caregiving. You live in one state, they live in another. Family disagreements. Physical care needs. Making sure that they're able to walk, needing to get a walker, needing to get a wheelchair. How will they shower? Change. One of the things that's constant is change, but change, we very much fear change. And when you're dealing with an older person who has been living in their house for 40 years, change is very frightening. Uncertainty, poor and ineffective medical care, money, money, money. Legal matters, a need for a move to more. A decision has to be made. What do we do? Mom is not able to walk up and down the stairs. Now what do we do? Depression. That's what I deal with. I work with residents who come into an assisted living in transition and they are depressed. Memory problems, life, health, safety concerns. The one thing that families always talk about is safety, safety, safety. Driving, a big piece that I hear about. how because they weren't no longer able to drive, they felt their independence was taken away. Refusal of medical assessments, frustration and anger. And so for the caregiver, these are some of the feelings, symptoms you're going to feel. Alone or overwhelmed, tired, changes in weight, too much or not enough sleep, health problems, headaches, anxiety, depression, panic attacks like I was having, excessive guilt, shame or blame, loss of control. Just like your loved one is feeling a loss of control, you begin to feel a loss of control. So it's important for you to take time for yourself, look after your health, talk to family and friends, see your doctor and speak to them about how you're feeling. That's what I did, and my doctor helped me. Join a caregiver support group, consult a counselor or a therapist, and look for aging services in your community for resources. They're out there. So it's a difficult balance trying to support our parents' right to make independent decisions that put them at risk while protecting them from their own bad choices or decisions. How do you as a caregiver approach the conversation with your loved one? How does one not control the conversation and dictate the decision? How does one respect their loved one's autonomy, the right to self-determination, while making sure their loved one's safety and well-being is a priority? How hard can we push? When do we know that we have to pull back? So here are some suggestions, and Barbara, please add in if I'm missing anything. One of them is strategic persuasion, which I'll talk about in the next slide when I talk about communication stoppers and communication connectors. Reframe the resistance, okay? So you're getting resistance from your loved one. What you need to do in your mind is reframe it. Understand what is happening to them. So take a different snapshot of your loved one. Understand. And this is what I explain to a lot of families. Understand your loved one is going through a loss of control, a loss of independence, their loss of self, of identity, who they were. They're questioning, who am I now, right? Their sense of productivity. What purpose do I have now in life? If you send me to an assisted living, what will my purpose be in life? Am I going there to die? Have I lost my purpose? So in your mind as a loved one, reframe that. Take a different snapshot and think about, understand what they're going through. Start small and offer options. Don't throw out everything at them at once. It's too overwhelming. Small steps and offer options. I can give you an example. I started working with a woman when I started at the assisted living in Yonkers, and she was very depressed. And one of the reasons is that she didn't want to be there. Her sons didn't offer her any options. They made the decision for her to move into the assisted living without telling her. They just made all the plans, and they thought she would love it because it was beautiful and fancy. And this is a woman who was Hispanic and they lived all their lives in an apartment. They thought, oh, their mom is going to love this. Well, it was an antithesis to how she grew up or to how she raised her family. And she wasn't part of the decision making. So she really fell into a deep depression. Recruit outsiders like myself, like Barbara, resources that can help you to have the conversation, to help with the difficult balance, and then accept your limits. Don't feel like you can fix everything. Can't. So look for resources. Let people help you. Any questions so far? I know I'm going fast.
I think you're doing great and you're right on speed. So, a couple more minutes and then we're gonna make sure we give Barbara some time too.
So, communication tips. Don't use communication stoppers. All right. This is something that we all do with our families, with friends, right? This is something I teach my social work students right at the beginning of them coming into social work schools. Do not do this, right? Right. Don't do this. Don't give premature, unsolicited advice. I think you should do this, right? Don't be the fixer. I'm going to fix it for you, right? They're not looking for you to do all the fixing. They do need help, but allow them to be part of it. Don't interrogate, pound them, pound them, pound them with questions. Don't be condescending and minimize. It's not as bad as you think. It'll be fine. Oh, mom, you'll love it. Don't be condescending. Don't patronize. Don't overgeneralize to them. You always or never. Don't over detail. Again, a few details at a time. Don't be aggressive. Be too excited. Again, you need to take it slow. And don't sulk. I understand this is your loved one. This is your parent. And I know it's a very different relationship than they have with me because I'm a therapist. I'm objective. You're subjective. And so, yeah, I sulked at times with my mom and my dad, because I was taking it personally. They're my mom and my dad. But these are some pointers for you. Don't chastise. Don't sympathize and have pity on them. Rather, empathize. They don't want your pity. Don't preach, get on your little soapbox and give them a whole sermon about why they should do it. As I mentioned, patronizing. And body language. Make sure when you're sitting with your loved one, you're not focused on something else, because you're busy. You have your laptop open, or you got your phone in your hand, or you're answering your phone or answering text. You're not facing them. You have your arms crossed because you're getting angry. One of the important things I do is I really center myself on the person, and I have nothing to get in the way. So we can do that. And so these are your communication connectors. Empower your loved one by helping to arrive at a solution together. And one of the best ways we can do that is something we call active listening or reflective listening. And basically, it means you just attach a third ear to your head. So instead of 2 ears, you have a third ear, right? And you really listen. Don't interrupt, pay attention, be right on them. Don't jump in, hear and understand what they're communicating to you, and respond thoughtfully so that they know that their feelings are being heard. Focus. Don't allow distractions. I know that's easier said than done when you have a family and you're talking to your loved one, your mom and your dad, and they're at home, but find a way to be present, alert, and connect with them. Validate them. Don't diminish their problem. Validate how they're feeling. So, Mom, you really are feeling really, really down about this. I'm hearing that's what you're saying. And appreciate and respect their opinion. Respect them. Treat them with dignity. Remember, they raised you. Understand and hear them out completely. Don't jump in. Hear them out. Here's a tip that's really good for anyone who's trying to communicate with anyone. Never use why. Why shouldn't we use why when we ask questions? Because it puts the person on the defensive. So if I say to Barbara, so Barbara, why did you do that? Right? Automatically, Barbara starts to bristle. Instead, when you ask questions, remember, use how. How did you do that, Barbara? Or what did you do, Barbara? Or when did you do that, Barbara? Or where did you do that? Or would you do that for me, Barbara? You know, so it's how, who, what, when, where, not why. Why puts your loved one or whoever you're talking to on the defensive. Respond by focusing on the desirable outcome. Resist their reactivity and don't chastise them. And empathize. Be compassionate. Don't make them feel powerless. Remember, your loved one is feeling they're losing control and their independence. So here's an example of reflective communication. I don't know if any of you have this experience. We had it with my mother-in-law. She got in an accident. She was 85, and all her sons decided that they were going to take her car away, right? So they, basically did it in a way which got her very angry and resistive. So, but there's a different way to do it. So this daughter, Rachel, she's thinking on the verge of taking Sally's car keys away, but she knows her mother will resist and become very angry. Instead, Rachel sat down with her mother and asked her probing questions, showing concern and interest. How would you get around if you couldn't drive? The how, right? Or instead of saying to her, well, why would you still be driving, Mom? Are you limited driving at all, Mom? Are there times you feel anxious behind the wheel? Would there be a benefit to not driving at all, such as, Mom, let's take a look at no car insurance, no maintenance fees? Here's some phrases that you can use yourself when you're having that conversation that you need to have with your loved one. And by the way, don't say, Dad, we need to have a talk. Mom, we need to have a talk. When we say that to someone, when we say that to our kids, right? Automatically, what sets up in them? They're like defensive, bristly, fear. Oh my God, here comes the talk, right? So say to your mom, your dad, whoever your loved one is, I was wondering if you had some time and we could have a conversation about, finances. I noticed you've been mentioning it lately, and let's sit down together and talk about it and have a conversation about it. I want to hear your point of view. I want to understand from you, Mom, how you're seeing your finances so that I can better understand better how to help you. You see how that is gentle, but you're like strategically persuading them to move towards having the conversation. So here's some phrases. Does it sound reasonable to you? I'm sensing. I use a lot of, I wonder if, from your point of view, so I see or I understand the problem as you're saying is this? Correct me if I'm wrong. Let me see if I understand what you're saying, Mom, and correct me. And let's put our heads together. Is it possible that? So this is what I think I hear you saying. And this is what I'm saying. Let's see how we can come together on it. So you're feeling da 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 da. Could it be that? These are all, good openers to getting into the conversation without, your loved one feeling like they're being disrespected, they're being told what to do, they're being fixed, they're being chastised. Okay.
Really great. This is really great.
Oh, and one more thing. When you speak to someone, you know how we always say but? So I hear you, Mom, but, right? What does the but do? The person knows that you're hearing them, but means that you're not really going to be hearing them. So what we've learned is to say, I hear you, and instead of adding your phrase, but da 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 da, this is not going to work, what you say is, I hear you, Mom, and I am concerned this may not work. Instead of saying, but I'm concerned this is not going to work. You see also the difference in the tone of voice? And you can do this with others too, like your kids, your partners. Try to not use but, replace it with and. This is what I teach my couples.
That's great. That's great, Vincenza. That's super, super helpful. And I think I've learned a few things I'm going to try on my kids tonight. So I'm getting some extra credit.
Me too, Jesse.
Um,
Me too. Me too.
Excellent. All right, cool. So we're running a little behind, but this was all good stuff. So I don't want to cut you off. It was really super helpful. And I think it really sets the stage well. And the bottom line is, I think what we find here is that there is support for us, right, in understanding how to have this conversation. There's also support in bringing someone into the conversation. So that's the type of thing Vincenza and others in her field will do. So it's really nice to know that you can provide that service, and now we have a nice contact to think about if others need to have that conversation or how to have that conversation. So it's a really good segue into what Barbara does. And I thought, when I heard what Barbara's business was, I thought it was genius. I can't believe that there's not these on every street corner. But Barbara's model, and she'll tell you a little bit about it, is really to take care of a lot of the issues that will come up in these conversations. So it's a really good segue. So with that, Barbara, if you want to give probably try to keep to 10 minutes and a background, and I think the most important thing, again, Barbara, is just understanding what the service you provide is, and that's out there. And I'm sure we can accomplish that in 10 minutes or so.
Okay, can you guys see me? Because I can't see me, which is fine. But I was sharing Vincenza's screen, so you can see me.
Yeah, we got you.
Okay, great. Okay. So first of all, thank you, Jesse and Cole. And I'm sorry, but you've really been upstaged by Vincenza, as usual. When Vincenza's in the building, we know we're going to hear something not only of value, but just such great compassion. And so V, once again, thank you so much. And hard shoes to follow, as always.
Your hard shoes to follow.
Anyway, love the mutual admiration, and again for Jesse and Cole. So just to give you a little background into my story, I too was a caregiver, but not for my parents, for my husband. And so in 2006, unfortunately, my husband was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and he was diagnosed terminal the day he was diagnosed. And V has heard this story. And so we were at his gastroenterologist's office at Columbia Presbyterian, and we're sitting in this little room, and we're getting this completely terrible news, this life-altering news. And Dr. Markowitz looked at me and said, I can't imagine what you're thinking. And my big-mouthed Irish litigator husband says, oh, she's thinking about the baseball tickets. And I looked at him and I said, you're right. And Dr. Markowitz could not understand at that moment how we could possibly be thinking about baseball tickets when we just found out that my husband was dying and dying soon. And so the comfort in that moment was knowing that we had resources. Thankfully, we had financial resources, but we had the resources of the heavy lifting. My brother being a doctor, Jim's sister being a critical care nurse, my brothers-in-law being in finance, my husband being an attorney, me being a researcher. So I say to our clients, where's your board? Where are we going to form your board? And in our case, we were able to form our board at our coffee table with our siblings. that was the beginning of a dignified life. I mean, we had no idea, because we were, we were all in, our between our late 40s and our early 60s, and we had not even, well, I dealt with my mother's death very early in my life, but in terms of losing our parents and thankfully not having lost any siblings, this was all new game to us, but we felt that we were prepared, even though we absolutely had no idea. What Vincenza and I find is that people are not prepared and they have no idea. So, unfortunately, the inevitable happened. We had 9-year-old twins at the time that my husband died. And I was a stay-at-home mom. I had been home for 10 years, and what was I going to do? I remembered something that I still, it still resonates with me and lived by. And again, V's heard this, but through Jim's treatment, sometimes people made eye contact with him and sometimes people didn't. Sometimes people acknowledged him and sometimes people didn't. And in all that Vincenza has taught us in communicating, the most important person in the room, the star of the show, as we call them, is the parent or our client. You might be writing the check, you might be facilitating the decisions, but no one has the right to defy anyone's dignity. And so when my husband was very sick, a nurse came into his room and looked at me and said, "Is he hungry?" I mean, how many times have you heard at a doctor's office with, an older person or an attorney or whatever, just discounting like this person doesn't have a brain anymore. And my answer was like, I don't know, ask him. Like, it's just that simple, so even at your pediatrician's office, I know that, Jesse and Cole have younger children. I mean, that everybody needs a seat at the table. Everybody needs to know that their wishes are not only being addressed, but that they're leading the charge. So, having said that, not only do I piggyback on everything that Vincenza said about communicating and of course being the communicator that she has said so well, but when you have the pedantics, the boots on the ground, we're in the foxhole with you. We're walking the path with you. We're not giving you a list. We're not giving you any sort of a prescription. We're collaborating at a dignified life with the family in the exact same way that my siblings, my husband's siblings, and my husband and I collaborated. This is a familial experience that we're all going through. And even though you have two parents and you may be dealing with them sometimes at the same time, they're still individuals. Not everybody likes chicken soup. Some people like split pea. If you're making a pot of soup, don't assume you're making that same pot of soup for everyone in the room. So having said that, we work with families, tailoring care plans individually for the point in time that they're in and their breathing and their living plans, because in this journey, there is going to be change. We know there's going to be change. We know that there's going to be some sort of, and unfortunately so, deterioration. And depending upon what the circumstances are in the case, just how eminent things are and at what velocity you're moving. Vincenza and I get calls all the time when we realize these people should have called us months ago, a year ago, started a plan. Somebody is terminally ill. They don't have advance directives. As much as Jesse and Cole are trying to get somebody, to smell that coffee. No, we'll take care of it. We'll take care of it. And then all of a sudden, everybody's panicking. So what we try to do is we try and put the finger in the dike and get those plans in place as quickly as possible, or and gently, sometimes I love the expression personally, moving fast and breaking things, but sometimes you have to move fast and have it appear as if you're not moving at all. The listening part is the part that's going to set the tone, and the sense of urgency that you hear in families' voices are going to set the tone. So some of the things, watering this all down to the day-to-day, some of the things that we find in first dealing with a non chaotic and tragic situation where we're starting to grow into what our parents are experiencing, is noticing excuse me, perhaps a change in mood, personality is not the same. To V's point, we all speak to each other in these quick tones, like, what's wrong with you? Like, how come you didn't open the mail? How come, all of those challenging, why didn't you open the mail? No, we don't want. So when you're seeing a change in environment, maybe there's a change in the aroma in the house. Maybe somebody's personal hygiene looks different to you. One of my associates always says, how's the refrigerator health? Like when you open the refrigerator and you see, oh, those are leftovers that we went to dinner last Saturday night. They're still in the fridge. What are the nuances of change in a person's environment? And what are they indicative of? Maybe somebody's not feeling well and it's not the beginning of anything serious. But we're all the sleuth in our family's situation. We're trying to be detectives and understand the situation without being the alarmist. So Jesse talking about the top down versus the bottom up. Well, sometimes we have to do both and meet in the middle. So if finances are disorganized, then bills aren't getting paid, food is not being purchased in a timely manner. Insurance might not be premiums might not be paid. If you have long-term care and you, excuse the expression, blow your premium, you could have paid for this for decades, and in the time that you need it, you don't have it anymore. So you're really looking at very day-to-day, fairly standard and boilerplate things to begin with. And those nuances, as I say, those changes should be noticed. It's sometimes more obvious to notice these changes when you are a long distance caregiver, because you haven't been around and you don't see how gradual things change. So all of a sudden you come to visit and the house doesn't look the same. There might be a little hoarding going on, laundry accumulating. So in the big picture and the small picture, employing Vincenza's techniques in communicating on these day-to-day issues will pay off, because again, it's indicative of a lack of safety, whether there's spoiled food or throw rugs that slip or laundry that's not being done and skin is being compromised. Whatever those circumstances are, communicating appropriately is going to go a far way. So again, I piggyback on that, and not in staying calm and not panicking. Remember whose life you're dealing with, not being invasive, and in trying to move the ball in helping your loved one make a decision, understanding what the pedantics are. Does somebody, do you understand, and does your loved one understand what aging in place is? And how do you facilitate that aging in place? Discussing it and determining if you have the funds to age in place, finding the right home care, finding the right companion care, if you can't age in place, moving doctors, looking at it in independent assisted skilled care, all the things that, again, affect day-to-day life. We are going to walk that entire path with you in a personalized way. What we say is we try and match personality, geography, and budget. And that's in every discipline of what we work in. So could be in downsizing, it could be in decluttering, it could be in every aspect of aging in place, finding the home care, finding a ramp, putting up grab bars in the bathroom. I mean, everything from the smallest task to the most grandiose. What kind of equipment do you use? Is your bed still correct to sleep in? Should you be speaking with your doctor to maximize your Medicare and what they will provide for you through your insurance? Do you have the right supplements? Should you start to think about Medicaid? What does that look like? And what, in the other segments that Jesse's going to present to you, you'll have a Medicare specialist with you. You'll understand that Medicare is not going to do what everybody thinks it's going to do. Medicare is not long-term care. Medicare is healthcare, and it's a limited amount of healthcare. It's 80% of your healthcare. You have to provide yourself with supplemental insurance to cover the other 20%. You have to provide yourself or your loved one with Part D insurance to cover your prescription. None of this is automatic. It takes a village to figure out what you need, when you need it, how to get it, what it costs. There's no guidebook. Medicare doesn't even give you a guidebook. Even speaking with a Medicare specialist, you get off the phone and you're like, what did they just tell me? That's why you really need a professional who doesn't work for Medicare to translate and give you a lexicon of what they're really talking about and breaking it down.
Barbara, I'm gonna just, because we only have 5 minutes left.
Yes, I see that.
I want to save, just in case anyone has any questions. I didn't want to stop you or
No,
Vincenzo
no.
because there's such good stuff. But I did want to save just at least a couple minutes to see if anyone
Yes,
has anything
absolutely.
specific.
No,
Did you want to wrap before I do that?
So just to wrap, we are happy to speak with people. We have all of our first calls are pro bono. We're able to, whether it's through Vincenza or, through Cole and Jesse or just word of mouth, we are, and I know from personal experience, Vincenza is the same way. We're put it forward people. Never feel like you're not without a resource. Never feel like you can't call us and say, I don't know if you do this, but do you know someone who can help me do this? We're just open books and open Rolodexes for whatever might need, be needed now or in the future.
Great, thank you. Okay, all right, well, so does anyone have a question that they want to ask either Vincenza or Barbara?
No one ever wants to talk about this.
I'm okay with it.
I have not a question, more of a comment. Jesse, thanks for inviting me to this. It was great. I was a caregiver for my dad. So I'm first generation, my in-laws and my parents are immigrants. And if they did a quarter of what you're stating now, it would be fantastic. For me, the obstacle was them, and you gave great talking points on how to speak to them. I think for myself and for my husband is speaking to them when they're early enough in age to be able to have a conversation that they'll listen. Because the older they get, the more difficult it is. With my mother-in-law, my husband was the one in denial. Like, he would see her all the time. We saw, steady decline up until she fell. And all of a sudden the Alzheimer's went to dementia. And thank God we were able to find a caretaker that lives with her and is wonderful, but we were very lucky and fortunate. So everything that you're stating right now, you know, my mom is in her 70s. You gave me a lot of great points to start having these conversations with her now. She's fine, but this is when I probably should be having these conversations with her. So this way she understands. So more comment, great stuff. I enjoyed all of it. That's all.
Yeah, I don't know if I mentioned it. It's better to be preventive than to be reactive.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
learned that as a lesson myself. I'm also first generation. My parents, we came from Italy. They only spoke Italian. Very
So you
broken
understand. Yeah.
So I understand and I can really relate. And so one thing I've learned is it's better to, you know, do it early on rather than get to the point, as Barbara gave an example, where the crisis happens, you know, and everyone is, you know, running around trying to put out the fire.
Yeah, that was us with my mother-in-law. It all worked out, thank God, but it was, you know, it was very difficult.
All right. I'm going to stop us, and I feel bad doing it because it's really a sensitive, emotional topic. It really is, and so I feel bad being on a time frame. But I think what we started here is really super because it gives everyone a resource to come back to. So if anyone has questions or thoughts, I think now we have two resources. We have the ability to have someone to talk to if you're going through it, or if you want to pull someone in to have the conversation, or even if your loved ones need someone to talk to. Maybe both sides are stressed out. So there's that resource, and I think having Barbara in the fold as well gives us a resource. And I liked how she put it. Is everything from trying to figure out, do we need new facilities in the house, to do we need, who do we talk to about what types of communities or facilities could mom or dad be appropriate for. So what prompted me on this call was that I have people on the call now who have gone through some really tough situations, and I wish I had done a little bit more to be able to help, and and I'm starting to see that more and more. So we really want to have the resource put together to to be able to help clients on another level. So that's where we were today. I think in the next conversation we are gonna dig a little further into Medicare and actual facilities, what the difference are on the facilities that parents can go to. And then again, we're going to wrap up with some of the finances on elder care law. How do we take advantage of Medicare? How do we protect assets, estate planning, and so forth? So I'm excited for that. But I really appreciate everyone hanging in. I certainly, Barbara and Vincenzo, you guys did a terrific job. And Cole, thank you again for organizing. I would say to Mrs. Sonner that Cole does not have any children yet, even though he's
Thanks,
capable. And I don't know if that's disappointing news or good news, but I just wanted to set the record straight there before we go.
He's learning how to speak to me when I become old, but we're going through a lot of this with family friends and our family now. So every good thought and every point you both have made really hit home, and are such valid advice. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all.
All right. Thanks,
so
everyone.
much.
Thanks for the time.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good night.
Okay.
Thanks.
See you.
Bye-bye
Good
now.
night.
Bye.
Bye.